In the beginning, everything we thought we knew about the origins of humanity may have been a lie. For centuries, we've been told the same story, a simple narrative where God created the heavens and the earth, and Adam, formed from dust, became the first human being. But what if this story is incomplete? What if there's something much deeper, more mysterious, hidden from our view, buried beneath the surface of the texts we've trusted for so long? Could it be that the history we've learned isn't the full truth? Could there be secrets within Genesis itself? Secrets that challenge the foundation of our understanding about humanity's creation and our place in the world? In this video, we're diving into forbidden history, into the untold story of human origins. You'll see that Adam wasn't the first human on Earth. You'll explore how the two creation accounts in Genesis reveal not just a tale of mankind's birth, but a much larger cosmic mystery that has been hidden for millennia. We'll uncover the spiritual calling behind Adam's creation and why it matters more than we ever realized. Why did Cain fear being killed by others when he was supposedly the only one on Earth? What if the truth of humanity's origins is more profound, more universal, and more connected to every single one of us than we thought? Prepare yourself to discover how these ancient secrets could completely change your perspective on existence. We'll explore how these insights can impact your relationship with the divine, the path to healing, and the deep meaning of our role in this grand story of creation. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why the story of Adam and the mysterious human origins it points to is more than just an ancient tale. It's the key to understanding who we are, where we came from, and what our ultimate purpose is in this world. So, if you're ready to challenge what you thought you knew about the beginning of humanity, stay with us and see the truth unfold. And don't forget, comment below with your thoughts. Do you think humanity's true origins have been hidden from us? Let's start a conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe, so you won't miss any of the fascinating mysteries that lie ahead. In the beginning, the first creation story in Genesis seems so simple, so straightforward. God created the heavens and the earth, and then he created man in his image. Yet, when you look closely at the words of Genesis, you realize something startling. This isn't just one story. There are two creation accounts, and they are not identical. In fact, they are so different that many scholars have struggled for centuries to reconcile them. Some say the two accounts complement each other, while others claim they contradict one another. But what if, instead of trying to force these stories together, we took them at face value and saw them for what they truly are? Two completely different events. Genesis chapter 1 paints a grand, sweeping cosmic view of creation, showing the unfolding of the universe from a distance, like watching a vast landscape come to life. Day by day, God orders chaos. Light is separated from darkness. Waters are divided. Land appears, and plants sprout from the earth. On the sixth day, after all the creatures of the earth have been made, God creates mankind. In his image, male and female, he creates them. But notice the language here. Mankind, not a man, and certainly not an individual. This creation is universal, not personal. It speaks of humanity as a collective whole, blessed by God, given dominion over the earth, yet not specific to a single individual. There is no name, no specific garden, no intimate relationship. It is a creation of humanity, the entire species, in its grandest sense. But then, as we turn the page to Genesis 2, everything changes. Suddenly, the cosmic view zooms in, like a camera moving from a satellite shot to a ground-level documentary. This time, the focus is on one specific man, Adam, who is formed from the dust of the earth. He is given life by God breathing into his nostrils. God places him in the Garden of Eden, a specific location in the East. This isn't just the creation of humanity in general. This is the creation of one man for a specific purpose, a sacred purpose, as Adam becomes the first human called into covenant with the divine. This is where the confusion often sets in for many. Genesis 2 doesn't seem to fit neatly with Genesis 1. We're told that Adam is the first man, yet Genesis 1 said mankind was created together, male and female. How do we reconcile these two stories? If we only focus on the details, it might seem like a contradiction. But if we look at these accounts as two different perspectives on creation, each with a different focus, we begin to see that they tell complementary truths. Genesis 1 presents the creation of humanity as a whole, a cosmic, collective event. Genesis 2 zooms in on one individual, Adam, and the purpose that he, as the first human called into covenant with God, would serve. So, what does this teach us? The first lesson is profound. Sometimes the whole picture can only be understood when we stop focusing on the details. Life isn't always just about individual stories, but about understanding our place in the larger tapestry of humanity. Adam's creation wasn't about being the first biological human, but about being chosen for a specific spiritual mission, to serve, to guard, to represent humanity before God. He was the first to be given a role, a responsibility, and a calling. This is where humanity's true purpose is revealed. It is not enough to just exist. We are called to fulfill a mission that transcends ourselves, to participate in the grand plan that God has for creation. This idea of Adam as a spiritual representative, the first one called into relationship with God, shifts our understanding of humanity's role in the world. Adam wasn't just the first man in a biological sense. He was the first in a covenantal spiritual sense, standing as a mediator between the divine and humanity. This is where his role becomes incredibly significant. Adam was not just created to till the ground in a physical sense, but to serve in a sacred space, to guard and protect it, ensuring that the divine presence was respected and honored. And when he failed in his role, the consequences were cosmic, not just personal. The breach between humanity and God was not just a moral failure, it was a failure of the very calling Adam had been given, and through him, humanity itself was affected. Now this brings us to the next intriguing question. If Adam's role was so significant, why was he placed in the Garden of Eden, a specific, sacred space? The garden wasn't just a paradise, it was a temple, a cosmic temple where heaven and earth met. The Hebrew words used to describe Adam's duties, avad and shamah, go beyond simple gardening. They are the same words used to describe the duties of priests in the temple, those who guard and serve the sacred space. This temple imagery is important because it changes the way we understand Adam's creation and role. He wasn't just a man placed in a garden for his own enjoyment. He was the first priest, appointed to mediate between the divine and humanity, to maintain the holiness of the space and ensure that it remained a place where heaven could touch earth. And so, we see that Adam's story isn't just a personal one, it's the story of all humanity. He was chosen to represent the whole human race in a sacred relationship with God. His failure was not just a failure of one man, but a failure of the entire human race to live up to the calling that God had placed upon us. We are still living in the aftermath of that failure, and yet, even in the midst of humanity's rebellion, the story of redemption was already beginning. For even as Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, God promised a way back. That promise was fulfilled in Jesus Christ, the last Adam, who would come to restore what the first Adam had lost. But what does this mean for us today? The story of Adam is not just a tale of ancient history. It's a story about us. We too are called into a relationship with God. We too are given a purpose that goes beyond mere existence. Like Adam, we are placed in a sacred space, this world, and are called to fulfill a divine purpose. But unlike Adam, we have the opportunity to enter into that purpose with the knowledge that redemption is already available to us. We don't have to fail as Adam did. We can choose to embrace the calling that God has for us, to live out our purpose in a way that brings us back into relationship with the divine, to restore what was broken. This leads us to another important lesson. Adam's failure wasn't just about disobedience. It was about the rejection of his calling. He was called to be a priest, a mediator between God and humanity, but he chose his own will over God's plan. And in doing so, he created a separation between heaven and earth that affected all of creation. But the story doesn't end with Adam's failure. Jesus, the last Adam, came to restore what was lost, to offer us the chance to embrace our divine calling, just as Adam was originally meant to do. When we look at the story of Adam, we see the potential for all humanity. Adam wasn't the first biological human, but he was the first to be called into a divine purpose, to serve in the cosmic temple. This is our story too. We are all called to serve, to be representatives of God in this world, to restore the sacred relationship that was broken in the garden. The story of Adam is the story of humanity's redemption, a redemption that we can all embrace. And it's a story that continues to unfold today. So, what does that mean for us? It means that our lives have purpose. We are not just biological creatures randomly placed on this earth. We are image bearers of the divine, called to serve, to restore, to live in relationship with God. And just as Adam's failure had cosmic consequences, our choices today matter in the grand story of creation. We are not only participants in this story, but we are the ones who are shaping its outcome. This story, this truth, is not just about the past. It is about the present and the future. The story of Adam is the story of all humanity. It's the story of our calling, our failure, and our redemption. And it's the story of our invitation to return to the garden, to return to the sacred relationship with God that was lost, but is now being restored. Let this be a reminder to you today. You have a calling. You are part of this great cosmic story, and your choices matter. Just as Adam was given a purpose, so are you. You are called to serve, to restore, and to live in communion with the divine. May we, unlike Adam, choose to embrace our calling, to live out our purpose, and to walk in the path of redemption that was made possible through the last Adam, Jesus Christ. When we think of the Garden of Eden, we often imagine it as a perfect paradise, a place where humanity's story began in peace and harmony. But what if we told you that Eden was not just a garden, but a cosmic temple, a sacred space where heaven and earth met? In Genesis, we see a beautiful description of Adam's creation and his role within this divine space, but the deeper significance is often overlooked. Adam was not just placed in the garden to tend to the plants. He was called to serve as a priest, to maintain the sanctity of this holy space, to guard it, and to mediate between the divine and the earthly realms. The words used in Hebrew to describe Adam's work in the garden, avad and shamar, have a far deeper meaning than simply to work or to tend. These words are also used in the Bible to describe the duties of priests who serve in the temple. The priests were entrusted with the sacred task of maintaining the purity of the temple, keeping it free from defilement, and protecting it from anything that could harm the relationship between God and his people. Similarly, Adam's role in the garden was to protect the sanctity of this divine space, ensuring that it remained a place where heaven could touch earth, where the presence of God could dwell among mankind. This is where Adam's story takes on a new layer of meaning. He was not just a man placed in a beautiful garden. He was the first priest of creation, called to serve and guard the sacred space where heaven and earth intersected. His failure to uphold this sacred duty, to guard and serve the garden, to protect the holiness of this space, was not merely a personal failure. It was a failure of humanity's calling, a failure that would reverberate through the ages, affecting all of creation. When Adam and Eve chose to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they did not just break a command, they disrupted the divine order. They were called to serve in a sacred space, to live in harmony with God, but by disobeying they tore apart the very relationship they were meant to uphold. This is why their expulsion from Eden was not just about losing a physical paradise. It was about losing access to the sacred space where heaven and earth met, where the divine presence could dwell with humanity. But here's where the beauty of the gospel story unfolds. Although Adam failed in his role as the first priest of creation, God did not abandon his plan. From the very moment humanity was cast out of Eden, God began to unfold a redemptive story, a story that would bring humanity back into communion with him, back into the sacred relationship that was lost. Through the work of Jesus Christ, the last Adam, this cosmic temple that Adam failed to guard would one day be restored. Jesus would come to fulfill the priestly role that Adam could not, to restore the relationship between humanity and the divine, and to open the way back to the garden, not just as a physical place, but as a spiritual reality. When we look at Adam's failure, we see not only the brokenness of humanity, but the deep longing for restoration. Adam's story is our story. We too have been called to serve as priests in this world, to mediate between the divine and the earthly. We are entrusted with the sacred space of creation, the world around us, and our own hearts. Just as Adam failed in his calling, we often fail in ours. But the beauty of the gospel is that Jesus, the last Adam, came to redeem our failure, to show us what it means to truly live as God's representatives, to serve and protect the sanctity of the world he has entrusted to us. This leads us to the next profound truth. When we understand the role Adam was meant to fulfill, we can begin to see the fullness of our own calling. Just as Adam was placed in Eden as a priest to mediate between God and creation, so too are we called to be stewards of the earth, protectors of God's creation, and bearers of his image. We are called to serve as priests in the world, to live in harmony with God, to protect and preserve the sanctity of the world around us. But like Adam, we often fail in our role, and the consequences are profound. The world around us is broken, and we see the effects of our failure every day, in the environment, in our relationships, in the way we treat one another. Yet just as God did not abandon humanity after Adam's failure, he does not abandon us in our brokenness. Through Jesus Christ, we have been given the opportunity to embrace our calling again, to live as the priests we were always meant to be. Jesus came to restore the relationship that was lost in Eden, to open the way back to the garden, not as a physical place, but as a spiritual reality where heaven and earth meet. Through his sacrifice, we are invited to step back into the role of priests, mediators between the divine and the world, called to restore what was broken and live in communion with God once more. The story of Adam is not just a story of failure, it is the beginning of the story of redemption. And this story continues with us today. We too are called to serve, to guard, to protect the sanctity of the world, and to live in harmony with God. Our calling, just like Adam's, is cosmic in scope. The world around us is sacred, and we are entrusted with its care. This is not a small calling. It is a divine mission that transcends our individual lives and stretches into eternity. As we reflect on the story of Adam and the role he was meant to fulfill, we are reminded that we too are priests in this world. We are not just here to exist, to survive, or to fulfill our own desires. We are called to something far greater, to serve as mediators of the divine, to restore the brokenness of the world, and to live in relationship with God. Our failure, like Adam's, may be great, but the grace of God is greater still. Through Jesus Christ, we are given the opportunity to step back into our calling, to embrace the role of priesthood that was always meant for us. As we continue this journey of restoration, let us remember that our lives are part of a much larger story, the story of humanity's redemption, the story of the cosmic temple being restored, the story of heaven and earth coming back together. Just as Adam was placed in the garden to serve, so too are we placed in this world to serve. Our purpose is not just to exist, but to live in harmony with God, to protect and restore the sanctity of the world around us, and to fulfill the calling we were always meant to embrace. When we fail, as we inevitably will, let us look to Jesus, the last Adam, who came to restore what was lost. Let us embrace our calling with the hope that through Christ we too can fulfill the role of priesthood in this world. Through him, the way back to the garden is open, not just as a physical place, but as a spiritual reality where heaven and earth meet once more. Let us live as the priests we were always meant to be, serving, guarding, and restoring the sanctity of creation, bringing healing to a broken world. The story of Adam, and ultimately the story of humanity, is not just about failure, it is about redemption. Through Christ, we are invited to step back into our divine calling, to live as the priests of creation, and to restore the world to its intended glory. This is the story of hope, the story of grace, and the story of the cosmic restoration that is still unfolding today. Through Jesus, the last Adam, we are invited to embrace our true purpose and fulfill the calling that was always meant for us. As we reflect on the story of Adam, we must remember that his failure wasn't just personal, it was cosmic. Adam, the first human called into relationship with God, was also the first to break that relationship. His failure, his disobedience, reverberated through all of humanity. It was a failure that had consequences not just for him, but for the entire human race. And it's not just a tale of ancient history. It's a story that speaks to us today, a story that calls us to look at our own lives, our own relationships with the divine, and our own calling. The story of Adam isn't just about a man who ate a forbidden fruit. It's about the role of humanity in the grand design of creation. Adam was placed in a sacred space, Eden, not just to live, but to serve. He was appointed as the first priest of creation, to guard and tend the garden, to serve as a mediator between God and the world. His role was cosmic in scope. He was to be the one who upheld the sanctity of the garden, ensuring that it remained a place where heaven and earth met. But when he failed, when he chose his own will over God's, the entire creation was affected. The sacred space was defiled, and the divine presence was no longer able to dwell with humanity in the same way. The beauty of the gospel, however, is that this story doesn't end with Adam's failure. God, in his infinite mercy, did not abandon humanity. Even in the midst of humanity's rebellion, even as Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, God began to weave a story of redemption. He promised that one day, through the line of Adam, a Savior would come to restore what had been lost. Jesus Christ, the last Adam, would come to fulfill the priestly role that Adam failed to complete, to restore the relationship between humanity and God, and to open the way back to the garden. Not just a physical garden, but the restored spiritual communion that Adam had lost. In Adam's story, we see the story of humanity. We are all called into a divine relationship, a relationship that is meant to be sacred and holy. Just as Adam was placed in Eden to serve as a priest, so too are we called to serve, to be mediators between heaven and earth, to restore the sacredness of the world around us. But like Adam, we fail. We choose our own desires over God's will. We fall short of the glory of God. And just as Adam's failure had cosmic consequences, Our failure has consequences too, for ourselves, for others, and for the world around us. Yet the story of Adam is not just a story of failure, it is a story of redemption. In Christ, the last Adam, we are given the opportunity to step into the role Adam was meant to fulfill, the role we were always meant to fulfill. Through Christ's sacrifice, we are invited to be restored to our original calling, to live in relationship with God, to serve as priests in the world, to restore what has been broken. This is the heart of the gospel message, that through Jesus Christ, the way back to Eden is open. The way back to the divine presence is no longer blocked by our sin. But this restoration isn't automatic. It requires a choice, a response. We must choose to embrace the calling that God has for us. Just as Adam was called to serve in the garden, so too are we called to serve in this world. We are placed in a sacred space, our lives, our relationships, our work, and we are called to restore the sanctity of that space, to live in harmony with God and with one another. Just as Adam was entrusted with the care of the garden, we are entrusted with the care of the earth and the relationships that we are a part of. This is our divine calling. And yet, how often do we fail? How often do we choose our own desires over God's? How often do we fail to uphold the sacredness of the world around us, to protect and serve the divine space we've been given? But here's the good news. Just as God did not abandon Adam after his failure, he does not abandon us. In our failure, God's grace is even greater. Through Jesus Christ, we are given the opportunity to begin again, to step back into our calling, to fulfill the role we were always meant to have. This is the beauty of the gospel. It is not just about forgiveness, but about restoration. It is not just about salvation, but about stepping back into our divine purpose. Jesus came not just to forgive our sins, but to restore the relationship between humanity and God, to restore our priestly role in creation. Just as Adam was meant to mediate between the divine and the earth, we are now called to do the same. Through Christ, the way back to the garden is open. The way back to God's presence is restored. The cosmic temple that Adam was called to serve is being rebuilt, and we are invited to participate in that work. The story of Adam teaches us that we were made for something greater. We were made for relationship, for service, for purpose. We were made to live in harmony with God and with the world He has created. And just as Adam's failure had cosmic consequences, so too do our choices matter. Our lives have eternal significance. What we do with the space we are given, our relationships, our work, our environment, matters. We are called to restore the sacredness of this world, to be mediators between heaven and earth, to fulfill the divine purpose we were always meant to fulfill. But this restoration requires a response. It requires us to look at our lives, to acknowledge our failures, and to choose to step into the calling that God has for us. Just as Adam was called to be a priest in the garden, we are called to be priests in the world. We are called to serve, to restore, and to live in relationship with the divine. And just as Adam's failure was redeemed through Jesus, our failure can be redeemed as well. Through Christ, the last Adam, we are given the opportunity to live out our calling, to restore the brokenness of the world, and to step into the fullness of the life we were meant to have. We are no longer defined by our failures, but by the grace and redemption that is offered to us through Jesus. And in this redemption, we are invited to be part of the cosmic restoration that is unfolding even now. The restoration of humanity's relationship with God, the restoration of creation, and the fulfillment of the divine purpose for which we were made. This is the story we are a part of. This is the calling that is on our lives. Just as Adam was placed in the garden to serve, so too are we placed in this world to serve. Our choices matter. Our lives matter. And through Christ, we are invited to fulfill the role we were always meant to have. The cosmic temple is being restored, and we are called to be a part of that restoration. So let us step into our calling. Let us live in the purpose for which we were created, and let us fulfill the divine mission that is ours to complete. As we come to the end of this journey through the forbidden history of humanity's beginning, I hope you can feel the weight and the power of what we've explored together. The story of Adam, from his creation to his failure, and the redemptive story that followed, is not just a tale from ancient times. It is a story that speaks directly to us today, to our own struggles, our own failures, and most importantly, our own calling. When we look at Adam, we see not just a man, but a reflection of humanity's deepest longings and greatest weaknesses. We see the call to serve, to protect, to restore what was broken, and the weight of choosing our own will over God's. Adam's story is not just about one man in the garden. It is about each of us, placed in the world to fulfill a divine purpose, called to steward creation and walk in relationship with God. Just as Adam's failure had cosmic consequences, so do our choices. But the beauty of the story is that through Christ, the last Adam, we are offered restoration, a chance to step back into our divine calling, to fulfill the role we were always meant to play. The invitation is clear. Jesus came to restore what was lost. Through him, the way back to the garden is opened, not as a place, but as a spiritual reality, where heaven and earth meet. The cosmic temple is being restored, and we are invited to be a part of it. Our failures do not define us. They are part of the story that God is writing, a story of redemption, grace, and the fulfillment of our calling. This is not just a story about the past, but about the present and the future. The calling that was placed on Adam's life is the same calling that is on ours. We are called to be priests in this world, mediators between the divine and the earthly, to restore what is broken and to live in harmony with God. Our lives have purpose. We are not here by accident. We are part of a larger story, a story of cosmic restoration that began in Eden and will be completed when heaven and earth are united once again. I invite you, as we reflect on these profound truths, to consider your own place in this story. Just as Adam was given the opportunity to choose, so too do we have the freedom to choose the path we walk. The way of Adam, filled with failure and rebellion, or the way of Christ, the last Adam, who succeeded where the first failed and offers us redemption. This is the story of hope, the story of grace, the story of restoration. If this video has touched your heart, if it has helped you see the deeper meaning behind the ancient stories we've been told, or if it has given you a sense of purpose and direction in the midst of life's struggles, I invite you to show your support. Your energy, your encouragement, your likes, and your subscriptions are what allow this message to continue to reach others. Every little bit helps, and every act of kindness is deeply appreciated. If you feel that this message has brought light into your life or helped you find peace in a world that often feels dark, please consider supporting the work we're doing here. Your support, no matter how small, is priceless to me. It fuels my desire to continue sharing these stories, to continue exploring the hidden truths in the Bible, and to bring these messages of hope to those who need it most. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this journey. Every comment, every share, every moment of engagement is a gift. Let's continue to walk this path of discovery together, to uncover the mysteries of our existence and to restore what was lost. The story of Adam is the story of all of us. And in Christ, that story continues, bringing hope, healing, and the promise of a future where heaven and earth are fully united. May this truth resonate in your heart, and may you walk forward with the knowledge that you have a divine calling, a sacred purpose, and a place in the grand story that God is unfolding. Thank you again, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. May the peace of the Lord be with you always.